Hello fellow founders, welcome to another video in what is now going to be a series of videos as I document the journey of Oqire, which is my startup. I'm going to term this series the Founder Daily Vlog, even though I might not necessarily be creating a video every day. The intention is to kind of shine a light on the day-to-day workings of a very early stage startup as it looks to grow and develop over time. I've chosen to do this in a video format to support some of the written content that I'll be putting out, but I definitely feel that doing it via video, it's A, quicker, B, I hope to build a little bit more of a community and you can kind of get a little bit more of an unfiltered sense of what's happening in the day-to-day life of Oqire and what it feels like or what it is like for me as a startup founder. So in today's video, I thought a great place to start is to talk about the process of incorporating in the US if you're a non-US citizen. I'm based here in Australia, but I went through the Founder University program, which is put together by Jason Calacanis and his launch team. And off the back of that, was successful in receiving $25,000 of investment. But in order to receive that money, I needed to be a Delaware C corporation. Now, before I get into the nuts and bolts of this video, I do just want to point out that nothing I say is financial, legal, or advice of that nature. If you are looking to do this, please consult your own experts and look at the information and content on government websites and the like directly yourself so that you can make an informed decision. But the process that I want to share today is just to share a little bit about what I've gone through, maybe help point you in the right direction and show some of the reasons why I chose to do certain things. So in America, it's very, very, very common for angel investors and venture capitalists to want to invest in Delaware C corporations. For those of you who aren't aware, Delaware is just a state in America and you can register your company in any state essentially. So you could have a corporation in New York or Florida or whatever the case may be. But because Delaware has a strong history of case law, it gives the venture capitalists and angel investors a lot of confidence around what would happen if a legal situation was to eventuate, and it gives them a lot of certainty. But I guess by extension, it therefore also gives founders and CEOs of companies a lot of certainty of, hey, if we register in the state of Delaware, we know exactly what we're in for. We've got that good body of case law if there is any legal issues that arise in the future that can set some precedent for these kind of things. So because of that, obviously the recommendation by a lot of people is to register as a Delaware C corporation, and that's the path that I took. If you are going down this path and looking to incorporate in the US, just be aware that there is also a concept known as a limited liability corporation or LLC. That's typically not what investors want to back. So again, dive into that and understand that a little bit more in your own right, but just to kind of paint the picture, you may see the term LLC and Delaware C Corp mentioned quite regularly. Now, the other good thing about a Delaware C corporation is that you do not need to be a US citizen to set up a Delaware C corporation. Obviously, I'm here in Australia. I'm not a US citizen. I have no plans on being a US citizen. Besides not being a US citizen, it just makes the process slightly different. So if you are a US citizen, it's a little bit quicker. I'll get to that in a minute. But other than that, the process is essentially the same as far as I've been able to experience. So with Oqire, I did complete the Founder University program at the end of 2022. Was part of one of 20 startups that had the opportunity to pitch Jason Calacanis and the team. And then shortly after that, after providing a little bit of update to the launch team to get this offer from them that they wanted to invest $25,000 into Oqire to see where we can go, which is fantastic news and obviously something that I'll probably speak about in a little bit more detail later on. Because of that, went through the process of registering Delaware C Corp. I chose to use Capbase. I'm not going to recommend that as a platform. I might do a separate video on that at a later point in time, but just know that there are multiple different platforms that exist that allow you to register a Delaware C corporation. The time frame to register is a lot different compared to what I'm used to in Australia. So in Australia, I could register a company, have my tax file numbers, and have a bank account set up in probably about half an hour to an hour. And I'm not exaggerating there, it's extremely quick. But even though there's these online services, it's a lot longer time frame. So basically, once you go through one of these platforms, they typically say it's 1 to 3 days to hear back from the state to say, hey, congratulations, your company has been incorporated. that really is only the first part of a series of parts, because what you then need to do is get what is called an employee identification number, or EIN. That comes from the IRS, which for those of you who aren't aware is like the taxation authority in the US. That process is long. So I started that at the end of December in 2022. It took me until the start of February before I got that number. And a lot of what they do is based on fax machines. So they actually fax this information back to you as opposed to sending it via email or being able to access it digitally online. They also do post it, but obviously that's going to take even longer than a fax. And your registered agent, which in my case was CAP-based, but as I said, there are other services, acts as an intermediary which basically starts this process. So that took, as I said, till February. The other really interesting thing in the US, obviously the land of technology and venture capitalism, it's extremely hard to open a bank account. So again, in Australia, I could pick any number of bank accounts or banks here and have an account open within a very, very, very short period of time, 30 minutes, an hour, and without actually having to ever visit branch, all online. In the US, the majority of banks require you to actually be there in person. As a result, there are a couple of startups that have kind of created services that sit over the top of banks and still give you a bank account, but aren't a bank in their own right. So the company that I used to do that was recommended by CapBase, and they were called Brex, B-R-E-X. Their onboarding process was a little bit cumbersome because they have both a cash account and a card account, and you don't necessarily want to apply for a card account. It's basically like a revolving line of credit that is tied to your cash account, but it wasn't exactly clear that those two things were separate or that you didn't need the card account. Again, no, other than that little hiccup, getting through that process was around like 2 or 3 days as well. So you can see that all of a sudden this time frame stretches out to be quite some time. And it wasn't till the middle of February basically where I had my bank account. And then after you've done all of that, you then need to purchase your founder shares, which you set up when you first incorporated the company, and basically transfer that initial set of funds to say that you've purchased those. So quite a long and windy process to incorporate in the US. But now that I've got through all of that, it seems to be fairly smooth sailing, bar one final other thing, and that is the biggest thing that I'd probably point out from this whole experience, which is the compliance and taxation requirements are immense in the US. In Australia, I could probably get away with spending around $1,000 a year with an accountant and manage the books largely myself. Australian tax law is very straightforward for a company. You do an annual tax return. It's governed at a federal level. You do have to do business activity statements at a state level as well, but that is basically very, it's literally a 2-page document. It's very, very easy and very straightforward. And it's a set tax rate no matter where you are in Australia, no matter what state you're in. But in the US, you have Delaware tax requirements, and then you have IRS tax requirements, and then you have additional tax requirements if you're a foreign founder. So when I do my annual tax return, there's an additional form that I actually need to fill out because I'm a foreign founder, and if you fail to fill that form out, it's a $25,000 fine. So I'm going to also probably do a separate video on all of that, but just something to definitely be aware of if you are looking to incorporate in the US as a foreign founder. I'd strongly recommend that you look at a couple of different services for incorporating in the US. There's quite a lot out there. CapBase is one of them, as I mentioned, but I would read through and really understand it. To be honest, probably even ask if you can speak to these service providers in advance of using their platform, because some of them are quite opaque in terms of what the process is. They're very quick to say, hey, send us your money and we'll create this company, but like, what are the steps and how do they help you on each of those steps that occur next throughout the journey? Not as clear and transparent as maybe you'd like them to be. Anyway, as I mentioned, this is the first in a series of hopefully ongoing founder vlogs that I aim to do on Oqire. If you've incorporated in the US recently, comment down below. I'd love to hear what your experience was and if it was quite the same as mine. But for now, I'll catch you in the next one, and thanks for watching.